Hello students, welcome to FS Cloud.
We have an app called Careers Cloud which you can go and download it from the Play Store. So after downloading it, you can easily log in using your Gmail ID. Once you have logged in, you will be redirected to a home page which contains 4 tabs beneath it. One is Home, the other is All Courses, next is My Courses, and the last one is a Doubt Session. So under All Courses, you can access various types of courses like Reasoning, Quant, English, and also exam specific courses can also be accessed under this All Courses. If you click this Crack Current Affairs, you will be redirected to this page. So under this, you can see various tabs that are available. So here, if you see, the current affairs will be available in English medium, this under Hindi medium, and here banking awareness, we will provide you the monthly compilation of the banking news and current affairs exam PDF, and also special current affairs, which includes mainly the budget, the union budget, the economic survey, which is very important from the exam perspective. And this is topic wise content where that topics news related to the specific topic, they will be combined together and provided to you. For example, see appointments. All the appointments in that particular month will be combined together in a specific place. And similarly, in case of banking, economic news, so all will be combined together. So this will be easy for you to relate to each other news. Next, you can access the daily current affairs on a daily basis, weekly basis, and also on a monthly basis. So after reading the weekly or the daily news, you can also attend our quiz in order to strengthen your knowledge. Under the monthly current affairs, if you see, there are 2 types of PDF that are available. One is the pocket PDF, the other one is the normal PDF. This pocket PDF will give you a brief content of our current affairs, and this will provide you a detailed analysis of the current affairs. So it is always preferable to read this detailed analysis and then have a go through of this pocket PDF. Next is that we also provide you the PIB news apart from the current affairs. So you can go and access our PIB news on a daily basis from this path. And as I mentioned, this special CA covers very special topics like budgets and economic survey. After reading the content provided in this PDF, you can go and attend the quiz given below. And next is the exam perspective PDF. So if you see IBPS PO mains, IBPS RRB clerk, SBI clerk, so these are all exam perspective PDF. So if you go and check, these PDF will contain around 5 to 6 months of the current affairs, which has high chances of high chances of being asked in this SBI clerk mains exam. So it is very useful to go and read this PDF from an exam perspective point. Today, we will be covering March 4th week banking and finance awareness news. Moving to the first news. The first news is about SEBI. So, SEBI cuts the minimum investment in social stock exchange instruments to 1,000 rupees. So, just like if any company or a corporate wants to raise money, they go to the stock exchange, they issue shares to the investors, and through that they get money and go invest the money for various purposes. Similarly, if you see the enterprises, they work for social changes, the non-profit organization, the social enterprises, if they need money, this is an exchange. The social stock exchange is an exchange where they can raise money from the donors or investors. So the non-profit organization and for-profit social enterprises, they can raise the money via these social exchanges. So here the donors and investors, they will give money to these organizations via the social stock exchanges. This is the purpose of this social stock exchanges. So if you see, recently SEBI has reduced the minimum investment value of the instruments in social stock exchanges so that many investors can take part. So here the social stock exchanges, they issue zero coupon, zero principal instruments to the investors. Just like the other corporates, they issue shares or equity to the investors. Here they issue zero coupon, zero principal, which means that the investors, they will not get any interest back. Generally, if you see bonds, when people invest, they get an interest rate on a regular basis. But here, in case of zero coupon, zero principal, the instrument will be issued at a discount. So unlike those bonds, here if you see, this is for a social cost. So this will not give any interest return or principal return for the investors. This is for a social cost. That is why this is a zero coupon, zero principal instruments. So if you see, previously the minimum investment of the instrument was 10,000, but now the SEBI has reduced this to 1,000 rupees. That is, previously if any investor wanted to buy the instrument, then he has to make a minimum investment of 10,000 rupees. But now it has been reduced to 1000 rupees so that even the small investors can participate if they want. So apart from that, if you see in November 2023, SEBI had reduced the minimum issue size for this zero coupon, zero principal instruments from 1 crore to 50 lakh. Say suppose a enterprise wants to list itself, okay, in the stock exchange. Then in November 2020, before November 2023, if you see, SEBI stated that if you want to list, if you want to issue zero coupon, zero principal instruments, then the minimum issuance value should be 1 crore. Only if you issue 1 crore, you will be allowed. But later on, it had reduced to 50 lakhs so that it will be easy for the enterprise to raise money. Similarly, application size also. If a people want to buy the instruments, previously it was 2 lakhs, then it got reduced to 10,000 and now it further got reduced to 1,000 rupees. Okay. Next is RBI revises the priority sector lending norms to boost credit access effective from April 1st, 2025. This is a very, very important news. Short, one question at least will come from this news. So please pay attention to this news. Okay, we all know what is priority sector lending norms. So this is set by the RBI and all the banks have to follow it. So it means that a certain percentage of their advances should be given to certain sectors that are very important for the overall development of the economy. So it was observed that there was very less or no flow of credit to certain sectors of the economy. Okay. To ensure that those sectors also get enough money, this priority sector lending was introduced by the Reserve Bank of India. And now they have brought certain changes, that is they have raised certain percentage of how much should flow to those sectors. Let us see them one by one. The first is priority sector lending target for the urban cooperative banks. So 60% of the total advances of the urban cooperative banks should be given from financial year 25 onwards. And also, if you see, they are required to achieve an overall PSL target of 75% by 26. Financial year 26, they have to achieve 75% and now they should have achieved 60% target by financial year 25. Okay, this one. Next, if you see, the total priority sector in urban cooperative bank 60% and sub-target micro enterprises 7.5% and advances to weaker section it is 12%. Remember the targets, 60% the overall target, 7.5% micro enterprises, 12% advances to the weaker section. Next is enhancement of several loan limits. So if you see the farmer credit to the individual farmers, the loans if you see 90 lakhs against the negotiable warehouse receipts and 60 lakhs against the warehouse receipts. So these two limits have been increased to 90 and 60 lakhs. So what is this warehouse receipts? See, farmers, they produce, okay, various products, various agriculture products, they will go and store in a warehouse. This is a registered warehouse, okay, not just any random warehouse, a proper registered warehouse. This warehouse will give receipt of how much value of the agriculture production is stored in this warehouse. The farmer will receive the receipt and go to the lending institution and will get money against the receipt. See, it will tell that this receipt is with the warehouse and the warehouse in charge will, the farmer cannot get the products from the warehouse whenever they want. Okay, the receipt is provided to the lending institution and lending institution will provide loan against this receipt to the farmer. The products will be under the control of warehouse and the lending institution. The farmer cannot go and get the products until and unless they close the loan. This is the purpose of the warehouse receipt. The difference between the negotiable warehouse receipt and the warehouse receipt, if you see, negotiable warehouse receipt means that the negotiable warehouse receipt, it has the power to transfer the ownership of the goods stored to the lending institution. I am telling it once again, under the negotiable warehouse receipt, the ownership of the goods stored in the warehouse can be transferred to the lending institution. But in this warehouse, the ownership cannot be transferred. That is why against the warehouse receipt, only 60 lakhs is given, but against the negotiable warehouse receipt, 90 lakhs is given because here the ownership of the goods can be transferred. So these two limits have also been increased to 90 lakhs and 60 lakhs. So this and all is latest limit. I am not mentioning the previous limit because it will unnecessarily confuse you. So I am only mentioning you the latest limits, that is the limits that have been changed and the new limits only. Next is farmer credit to the corporate farmers. So individual farmers, they will produce in the smaller farms, okay. But here the corporate farmers, they do a very huge amount of agriculture production. They are majorly controlled or influenced by corporations. Okay, the corporates will either control or influence them. These are called the corporate farmers. here if you see the loans against the negotiable warehouse receipt is 4 crores and against the warehouse receipts in this case is 2.5 crores. Remember in that case we saw 90 lakhs, here it is 4 crores, next 60 lakhs and here it is 2.5 crores. Okay. Next is loan up to 10 crore per borrower entity to the farmer producer organization. So FPO is nothing but when multiple farmers come and form a group, that is called as farmer producer organization. So here it is the limit is up to 10 crore per borrowing entity to FPO. So if you see, the urban cooperative banks are not permitted to lend to the cooperatives of the farmers. So they cannot lend to the cooperatives for the farmers, but the other entities can. Remember this point. Next is MSME. So the loans to the registered NBFCs for on-loading to the micro small enterprises up to 20 lakh per borrower. The lending institution has given loan to the NBFC and this NBFC has given loan to an MSME. Then that loan will be considered at a priority sector lending if the limit is lesser than 20 lakhs. The limit is lesser than or equal to 20 lakhs. If the loan provided is 20 lakhs, then that will be considered at a priority sector lending. Okay. Remember, the lending institution has given money to NBFC and the NBFC in turn has given money to the MSME up to a limit of 20 lakhs, then that will be considered as a PSL. And this is not applicable to RRB, Small Finance Bank and Urban Cooperative Banks. This is only applicable to Scheduled Commercial Bank, but not to RRB, Small Finance and Urban Cooperative. Remember this. Next is Expo Credit. So if you see the Expo Credit limit, it has been increased to 50 crores per borrower. So the sanction limit of up to 50 crores per borrower only to the domestic banks. For foreign banks and with lesser than 20 branches and foreign banks more than 20 branches, it is the same. No changes has been made. Only in case of domestic bank, small finance bank and urban cooperative bank, the limit, if you see, the new limit is up to 50 crores per borrower. Next is education. So education new limit is not exceeding 25 lakhs. And next housing, if you see, here if you see, it has been divided into 3 categories. First category is population of 50 lakh and above. The loan limit is 50 lakhs. Next is center with population of between 10 to 50 lakhs. Here the amount is 45 lakhs. And center with population below 10 lakhs, here it is 35 lakhs. The maximum cost of the dwelling unit should not be more than 63 lakhs, 57 lakhs and 44 lakhs. What does this mean? Say suppose construction, the total cost of procuring that house is 63 lakhs, then the loan that can be granted is only maximum 50 lakhs. Okay. So, this is telling that if the loan limit is up to 50 lakhs, then it is considered as a priority sector lending, right? Then if a 50 lakhs of loan is given, then the total cost of the project or the total cost of the house should not be more than 60 lakhs, 63 lakhs. Remember this, I am telling you once again, both this condition has to be met, only then that will be considered as a PSL loan, that is the total cost of the project. See, say suppose the cost of the project is 63 lakhs, the entire amount of loan will not be provided as a loan to the customer, right? Some part of the amount should be provided by the customer too. This is the customer contribution, customer margin. And the remaining will be provided by the bank. So, entire 100% will not be provided as a loan. Some part should be provided by the customer and the remaining part will be provided by the bank. Okay. So, in case the loan limit is 50 lakhs and also the maximum cost of the house is 63 lakhs, then only this will be considered as a priority sector lending. Say suppose I am telling you an example, the cost of the house is 75 lakhs and the loan they have given is 50 lakhs only, which is within this limit. But is this a PSL loan? No, it is not a PSL loan because the cost of the house is 75 lakhs, which is more than 63 lakhs. Though the limit is 50, though the loan given is 50 lakhs, but the cost of the house is 75 lakhs. So, this is not a PSL loan. Okay. Remember both this condition, the loan limit as well as the maximum cost of the dwelling unit, that is the housing unit, should be met, only then that will be considered as a priority sector lending. So, I will repeat this once again. Center with population 50 lakhs and above, then the loan limit is 50 lakhs. Between 10 lakhs to 50 lakhs, the loan limit is 45 lakhs and below 10 lakhs, the loan limit is 35 lakhs. Next is loan for repairs to damaged dwelling units. So, in case your property is damaged and if you want to make any repairing, for that also you can get loan, and that loan of certain amount will be considered as a priority sector lending. That will see the limit. So if you see with population, again the same category, 3 categories, 50 lakhs and above, 10 to 50 and below 10. So 50 lakhs and above means up to maximum, on the loan limit 15 lakhs, 10 to 50 lakhs means the loan limit should be 12 lakhs, and below 10 lakhs means the loan limit should be 10 lakhs. Same, the maximum cost of dwelling unit is the same as the previous one. If you see 63, 57, 44, this is the same case here also, 63, 57, 44. This repairing amount only changes, 15, 12 and 30. The previous one we saw 50, 45 and 35. Next is social infrastructure. So this is for, drinking water facilities, schools, sanitation, everything for social purpose. That is up to 8 crore per borrower. And in case if you want to build a healthcare facility in tier 2 to tier 6, then it is 12 crores per borrower. Remember, for drinking water, sanitation, construction of household toilets, it is 8 crores per borrower, maximum limit. And in case of, if you see, for building healthcare facilities like tier 2 to tier 4 centers, not tier 1. Remember, tier 1 is not included here, only tier 2 to tier 6, sorry, not 4, tier 6 centers, the loan limit is up to 12 crores per borrower. Next is renewable energy. So, renewable energy, if you see, the limit is 35 crores. Remember, renewable energy is 35 crores, that is street lighting system, remote village electrification, the renewable energy power generators. So, all this comes under this renewable energy category. Remember, it is 35 crores. So, weaker sections. So, they have, I have given only the weaker, apart from that, there are so many weaker sections. So, if you go and view the RBI Master Circular of the priority sector lending, there are totally 12 weaker sections that are provided, but only in these 4 sections the changes are there. Others and all are same as the previous update, but only in this the changes are there. That is why I have only provided the changes. Okay. So, artisan, village, cottage industries where individual credit limit do not exceed 2 lakhs. Remember, artisans, cottage industries, the limit should not be more than 2 lakhs. If it is within 2 lakhs, then it is a priority sector lending. Self-help groups or joint liability groups. So, previously only self-help groups was there. Now, joint liability group is also added. Next is individual women beneficiaries up to 2 lakhs. So, if a women beneficiary is given loan up to 2 lakhs, then that will also be considered as priority sector lending. And previously transgender was not there. Now, they have included transgender as well under the weaker section. Okay, remember this changes, it is very, very important. The next news about SEBI. SEBI to constitute high-level committee to review the conflict of interest in top ranks. So, if you see here, they are planning to set up a high-level committee. The members of the committee and all, it has not yet been published. So, they are still deciding upon it. So, once that details comes, I will tell it to you. So, remember now they are planning to set up a high-level committee to understand a comprehensive review of the provisions relating to the conflict of interest, disclosure pertaining to the property, investment and liabilities and related matters in respect of SEBI members and officials of the board. So, it is not for everyone in the SEBI, working in the SEBI, it is for the SEBI members and SEBI officials of the board. So, disclosure pertaining to the property, investment and liabilities, so all details how it should be published or what are the provisions, all these changes, whether any changes should be done, whether any updation should be done. So, for that this high level committee will be formed. Okay, for now just remember that this high level committee is set up to review the conflict of interest in the top ranks. Okay, so conflict of interest, if you see, when does it occur? When there is a conflict between the professional interest and the personal interest. When the two is against, is a conflict or it is opposite, then a conflict of interest occurs. Say suppose you are a honest person. This is just an example. Okay, as a person you are a very honest person, but the professional interest, as maybe you are some auditor or something, you have to reduce the money so that you have to reduce the profit so that the maximum gain is there for the customers. The customer is telling that I want to reduce the tax that I have to pay. So show me some losses, show me something else, which is not actually happen. So that if you see that is the professional term. So, but you are a honest person. So these two are what the customer is asking you to do, and what you are actually, it is contradicting, right? So this is a conflict of interest. So everything to review all that, if you see, a committee has been set, and certain other things have also happened in that meeting. One is SEBI approved to double the foreign portfolio investment threshold for granular disclosure to 50,000 crore. So previously, if you see, the granular disclosure is nothing but the beneficiary owner disclosure. Okay, that if you see previously, if the investment, that is asset under management of the equities of the FPI. Say suppose the FPI has invested of rupees 25,000 crore in an asset under management means, then the beneficiary owner details has to be published, has to be provided to the SEBI. Okay, but now this 25,000 crore has been increased to 50,000 crore. SEBI has approved a proposal to double the foreign portfolio investors investment threshold for granular beneficiary ownership disclosure from existing 25,000 to 50,000 crore. So from 25,000 to 50,000. So only if the FPI's investment in the asset under management is 50,000 crore, then it is enough to produce the beneficiary ownership disclosure. So it is very important because why did this actually bring why did the SEBI actually bring this BO disclosure? It's because sometimes what happens is that FPI, that is foreign portfolio investors, they invest in the financial assets like securities and bonds. Okay, their investment is only for short-term purpose. Okay, once the profit is come, they immediately exit. They sell the equities or the bonds and exit the market. So what happens is sometimes if you see the FPIs, the legal ownership will be different. That is the paper. Okay, on paper, whoever is owning the FPI will be different from actually who is the owner. So if you see legally, some person will be the owner, but actually if you see, the owner will be some other person who is actually controlling the FPI. The beneficiary owner is the person who actually controls or influences the FPI. He is different from the legal owner. So that is why if you see, this was a difference and this caused a lot of problem also in one of the biggest company in our country. So that is why this was introduced, and now from 25,000 to 50,000. So when 50,000 threshold has crossed, the FPI has to produce the details of the beneficiary owner. Whoever is the beneficiary owner, that details should be produced or submitted to the SEBI. Why was this limit increased from 25,000 to 50,000? It is because when the limit was issued, 25,000, compared to now, the trading volume, everything got doubled, more than double in the market. So since it has been doubled or more than doubled, that is why this limit has also been increased from 25,000 to 50,000. So with this, now FPI holding over 50,000 crore of equity assets under management in the Indian markets will be required to make additional disclosure. So from 25,000, it has been increased to 50,000. Remember this number. Next is SEBI eases investment rules for the category 2 alternate investment fund, allows investments in the lower rated listed debt instrument. So we know that there are 3 types of AIF, category 1, 2 and 3. Okay, and this change has been brought only to the category 2 alternate investment fund. This is because if you see the category 2 AIF, they are required to invest minimum 50% of their funds in unlisted securities, which poses higher risk but also yields higher return. We know that when the risk is higher, the return is also higher. So as per the category 2 AIF, at least 50% of their funds, say suppose their funds are 100 crores, then at least 50%, that is at least 50 crores should be invested in unlisted securities. Only then they can reap maximum profit. But unfortunately, what happened is that due to the latest amendments done by the SEBI, they have it has reduced the availability of unlisted debt securities, limiting the investment option for these funds. So how many ever unlisted debt securities were there? Say suppose there are something 1,000, and due to the amendments made by the SEBI, it has got reduced to 100. So the option of investing in the unlisted debt securities has gone down for the category 2 AIF. When you do not have much when you do not have much unlisted debt securities in the market, then where will you go and invest your money? So for that, to solve that issue, this amendment has been made. So this will enable them to invest in listed debt securities rated A or below. Previously they had to invest in debt securities A or above only, but now if you invest A or below, then that will be considered as an investment in the unlisted securities. So now such investment will be considered equivalent to investments in unlisted securities for regulatory compliance. Remember, so when a category 2 AIF invests in a debt security which is rated A or below, then that will be considered as an investment in unlisted securities. Okay, this is applicable only for category 2 AIF. Next is SEBI has now allowed investment advisors and research analysts to charge advance fee for maximum period of 1 year. So previously, if you see the investment advisors or research analysts, they were allowed to charge fees only up to 2 quarters. Only for this quarter and the next quarter you can charge fee. not more than that. But now what SEBI has told that you can charge the fee for entire year. So this gives a flexibility in the fee structuring for the investment advisors and the research analysts. Previously, they were allowed to charge fee for up to only 2 quarters and 1 quarter respectively. But now it has been increased to 1 year. Next is SEBI introduced key changes regarding appointment cooling off period for the MIA. Market Infrastructure Institutions Key Officials. Okay. So they have introduced certain changes. SEBI will no longer prescribe a cooling off period for the key managerial persons. Instead of that, the governing body of the market infrastructure institution has been entrusted with the responsibility to do so. So market infrastructure institutions are nothing but stock exchanges, the depositories, and the clearing corporations. So these are all called as the market infrastructure institutions. Okay. So here if you see, the cooling off period is, suppose there is a key managerial person. Okay. Key managerial person is nothing but he is a very important person in the decision making and all. So he has finished his term. Maybe say he had 2 continuous terms. Okay. So he has finished his terms. Previously, SEBI used to tell that there should be a cooling period of minimum 2 years or 3 years. Only then he can again come back to the office. Okay. This cooling period is mainly set just to check whether he has done, in that 2 periods, they check whether he has done any wrong activities or not. So all that will be checked. So that is why this cooling period is introduced. Okay. So SEBI used to fix the cooling period of the scheme manager person. That is, if they have been reappointed twice or thrice, if another reappointment is there, that can be done, but only after a cooling period. Generally, if you see even the CA and all, if a bank has a CA, then that CA team can be auditing the bank only for 5 years. Then a cooling period of 3 or 4 years will be given. Only after 3 or 4 years, they can come and audit the bank once again. So it is very good, because when the same auditor audits the bank once every year, then some malfunction might happen, some wrong things might happen. That is why this cooling period is there. Previously, SEBI was setting the cooling period, but now SEBI has told that the MIA board can itself set the cooling period for the key managerial person. And also it will be mandatory for now to get approval from the board of the MIA for the appointment of other key officials such as compliance officer, chief risk officer and the chief technology officer instead of the nomination and remuneration committee. So this nomination and remuneration committee was giving the approval, but now if you see, the board has to give approval for these officials. So these are the key changes with respect to the appointment and the cooling off period. We have launched a new course called Static Banking Awareness course. Now this course will be helpful for students who are preparing for the banking exams and for the regulatory body exams. And also recently you would have seen Paytm Bank in news frequently. So when an aspirant reads this news, he would have ample number of questions like what is a payment bank, what are the norms for it, and which is the committee that has launched it. So this Static Banking Awareness course lays a foundation to the current banking and finance news. Now, you have to download our Careers Cloud to access this course. Once you have logged into our app, you can go and click this All Courses icon, and then you'll be redirected to this page. In this, you have to go and click the Static Banking Awareness course, and under the Details tab, you will be able to see a brief about this course. And under the Part tab, it will contain all the contents, all the topics of the contents that are currently available in this course. We are working on this continuously, and this will be completed within 2 months. Under the Free tab, you can go and access one content, that is the origin and development content, for free. You can go and read this content and have an idea about this course. After reading this content, do attend the quiz that is also available under the same tab. Now, our team has allocated ample amount of time and resources to curate this content. We have created this content from various books and from various verified websites. Our content is better than any book that is available in the market. This is because we update this content on a dynamic basis. For example, there are currently 39 DRTs that are available in the country now. In future, if one more DRT is created or added, then it would become 40. So we would update this content on a dynamic basis. But in case of books, you have to wait for the next publication for this updated content. Nowadays, a lot of practical questions have been asked in the banking exams. For example, how many public sector banks are available on the stock exchange? Which is the payment bank that is being listed on the stock exchange? So we try to cover as many practical questions as possible in this course. Apart from this, we also provide you a question bank that will contain around 3000 questions,
and the previous year questions along with it. We also have a dedicated tab that will release the important RBI notification and the frequent news released by the RBI. You can use this code B15 to avail 15% discount. This is one of the highest discounts that we have offered until now. So do avail this code B15 while you purchase the course.
The next news is about the remittance data that has been released by the Reserve Bank of India. The Reserve Bank of India published a paper titled Changing Dynamics of India's Remittances, Insight from the 6th round of India's Remittances Survey. So if you see, there are two types. One is inward remittance, next is outward remittance. So what does inward remittance mean? So when our Indian people, they work outside, okay, the NRI people or the OCI people, when they work outside and when that family lives in India, they send certain money to their family. That is called as the inward remittance. Okay, when money comes from the outside world to India, that is called as inward remittance. And when the money is sent from India to the outside world, that is called as the outside remittance. So if you see, when the parents' kids go and study abroad for any PG courses or something, that time the parents, they will send some money to their kids for the maintenance. Okay, so that is considered as an outward remittance. So these are the two types of remittance, and now if you see, there has been a change that has been observed in the inward remittance pattern. So previously, if you see, most of the money used to come from the Gulf Cooperation Council. So the GCC had dominated the inward remittance pattern, but now if you see, it is being dominated by the advanced economies like USA, UK. A lot of money is now coming from the advanced economies. That is, more money is coming from the advanced economies than the Gulf GCC. Okay. So 50% of the inward remittance in the financial 24, it came from USA, Singapore, Canada and Australia. Remember this, 50% of the inward remittance, it had come from USA, Singapore, Canada and Australia. And the total remittance received in the financial 24, if you see, it is $118 billion when only $55 billion was received in 2010-11. So from $55 billion in 2010-11, we have grown to $118 billion. This is also an indication that people are sending more money, and a lot of people are living now in the foreign countries, especially in the skilled labor force, mostly in the advanced economies. When Indians there, the Indians there are mostly, they work in skilled workforce. So they are skilled employees. So now money is coming more from the skilled employees. The USA has sent the maximum amount of inward remittance, that is, out of the total inward remittance to India, 27% was from USA, followed by UAE, that is 19.2%. So the share of the Gulf cooperation, if you see, combined share of the Gulf cooperation countries, that is UAE, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, Oman and Bahrain, it stood at 38% compared to 47% in financial 2017. So here if you see, it has increased, the total remittance has increased tremendously. But if you see, the remittance from the GCC, it has decreased from 47% to 38%. So out of the total inward remittance, the maximum inward remittance, it was received by Maharashtra, that is 20%. Next, Kerala around 19.7%, just a close difference between two. First Maharashtra, next is Kerala and next is Tamil Nadu, that is 10.4%. Remember, first is Maharashtra, then Kerala, then Tamil Nadu. So the India share of international migrants has tripled from 6.6 million to 18.5 million. So this explains the reason of increase in the remittance. So when the international migrants increase, obviously the total remittance is also going to increase, right? So this clearly explains the reason for this. The next news is about the RBI data. So this is about the external commercial borrowing. See, when a company wants one, they can either raise it from the domestic people through issuing equities or through issuing bonds, or they can get money from the bank also. There is also another route, they can raise money from the foreign land. Okay, so they can raise money from the foreign companies. So it mainly is the main reason is the foreign companies will be able to invest a higher, very huge amount. That is one reason. That is, they can get huge amount of loan and also at an economical interest rate, at a cheaper interest rate. This is the main reason that the corporates or the startups in India look for funds beyond India. Okay. So here if you see the external commercial borrowing, they come and invest in the startups or the corporates in India, and that if you see, it is at 18.4 billion the first 10 months of the financial year 25. The first 10 months of financial year 25, it is 18.4 billion, 2 times compared to the financial year 24. So when the same 10 months of financial year 24 it is compared, it has now increased 2 times, which is very huge. The reason mainly for this is the cost of overseas fundraise has decreased. The funds are available for a cheaper rate and the cost of raising the fund has also decreased. The interest rate also has decreased. That is the main reason for this much huge amount of external commercial borrowing flow into our country. So if you see, the total amount extra that has gone out is 23.9 billion. So the amount that has come inside is 18.4 billion, but the amount that has gone out is 23.9 billion. What does this amount going out mean? It means the repayment of the principal. Whatever amount you have borrowed, other than the interest, you will also repay the principal, right? So through that principal, around 23 billion amount has gone outside India. The overall cost of external commercial borrowing is decreased by 129 basis points compared with the corresponding period of the last year. So of the total external commercial borrowing registered in the 10 months of the financial 25, 6.7 billion was for modernization. Modernizing the tools, modernizing the technology, that is called as modernization. Next is new projects and infrastructure development compared to 10.5 billion in the 10 months of the financial 24. So if you see in these kind of projects, in previous year 10.5 billion was invested, but now only 6.7 billion has been invested in modernization, infrastructure and new projects. The next news is a very, very important one. This is the new criteria for the MSME and this will be followed from 1st April 2025. So from 1st April 2025, this will be followed. So this is the new criteria and this is the old criteria. So previously it was considered as a micro enterprise if the investment was 1 crore and 5 crores turnover. But here now if you see, the investment should be 2.5 crores and turnover is 10 crores. Okay. It's quite easy only to remember. You just, the investment and all, it has been multiplied by 2.5 times. So I am sure you would have remembered the previous one, okay, because this is a very, very important classification. Every aspirant should remember this classification. So I am sure everyone would have read this investment, the previous investment and turnover criteria for MSME classification. That is micro 1 crore and 5 crores, small 10 crore and 50 crores, and medium 50 crores and 250 crores. So you just have to multiply the investment by 2.5 times, you will get the new investment criteria. That is 1 crore into 2.5 crores. Next 25 crores and next is 125 crores. This is the new MSME criteria on basis of investment, and then on the basis of turnover, if you see, it is 10 crores, 100 crores and 500 crores. Remember, 10 crores, 100 crores and 500 crores. It is nothing but it is a multiplication of 2. So here investment you multiply by 2.5 times and turnover you have to multiply by 2 times. That's all, and you will get the new criteria. Remember this, it is very, 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 very important. So if you see, 1 crore registered MSMEs are employing around 7.5 crore people in India. They are contributing around 36% to the manufacturing output, and the share of MSME in the India export is around 45.5%. So this is how major role MSME plays in our country. The next news is about the public sector banks dividend increased 33% to 27,000 crores. So you know that from equities, what do they get in return? Dividend. When the bond investors, they get interest in return, right? Similarly, equities, they get the appreciation also. The equity, that is the shares appreciate. Also, when a profit is there, the companies also declare dividend. So that is also one form of income that the investors get. So the public sector banks, the major shareholders are the public and the government. So here, if you see, the dividend increases 33% to 27,830 crores compared to just 20,000. So 33% increase in the dividend is very, very huge. So if you see, here there are multiple investors in the public sector banks, domestic investors, foreign investors, promoters and government. Okay, so all these people will be given dividends. All the shareholders will be given dividends, and if you see, approximately 65% is being paid to the government of India towards their stake. So depending upon the amount of stake the government of India holds, if you see, out of this 27,000 crore, around 65% has been given to the 18,000 crore, which means government of India holds a lot of stake in this public sector banks. Okay, and out of this 18,000 crore, okay, that has been paid to the government, 13,000 is solely paid from this SBI itself. So 18,000 crore has been paid as the dividend to the 18,000 crore has been paid as the dividend to the government of India. Out of this 18,000 crore, 13,000 crore is solely paid by the SBI. The remaining 5,000 crore is by the other public sector banks. Okay, so we know there are 12 public sector banks. Okay, 11 public sector banks have given 5,000 crore and one public sector bank has given 13,000 crore to the government of India. That huge is this bank, and that is none other than the State Bank of India. So the combined net profit of this public sector banks, if you see, it is 1.41 lakh crore in financial 24 compared to 1.05 lakh crore in financial 23, and now in this April to December, if you see, it is 1.29 lakh crore. Remember this is very important, 1.41 lakh crore in financial 24. Next, if you see, the largest contributor to the net profit is State Bank of India, that is 61,000 crore. Okay. So out of this 1.41 crore, 61,000 crore is given solely by the State Bank of India itself. So among the all India public sector banks, New Delhi based Punjab National Bank had the highest net profit growth of 228%. So the profit growth was highest in that in the Delhi based Punjab National Bank. Remember this, it is very important. The highest contribution of net profit is SBI, but the highest growth, if you see, compared to the previous year, it was in the Punjab National Bank. And Union Bank is this in the second position, that is 62%, and Central Bank of India in the third position, that is 61%. Remember, first is Punjab National Bank, 228%, the second is Union Bank of India, and third is the Central Bank of India. The next is government discontinues the medium long-term gold deposit under the gold monetization scheme. So if you see, under the gold monetization scheme, there are three components. So one is the short-term gold deposit, next is the medium-term gold deposit, the next is the long-term gold deposit. So these are the three components under this gold monetization scheme. And now if you see, the government has stopped the medium-term and the long-term with effect from March 26, 2025. So when was this gold monetization scheme introduced? It was introduced in 2015. The purpose is to reduce countries' reliance on the import of gold, and also to mobilize the gold that held by the households and institutions in the country to facilitate its use for the protective purpose. So how this works, if you see, the person, that is the customer, comes and submits gold to the bank. Okay, the bank will check the purity. There is actually a separate center where the customer will go and submit the gold, that I will tell you in the next upcoming slides. The bank will ascertain the gold value and then say, suppose the gold value is 1 lakh. Then what will happen is 1 lakh will be deposited, will made under this gold monetization scheme, a deposit. Under this 1 lakh will be deposited and the interest will be paid to the customer. Okay. For short term, a different interest rate, a medium term, a different interest rate, and long term, it is different interest rate. For each criteria, for each category, the interest rate differs and the tenure of that scheme also differs. Okay. So here a deposit, whatever is the value of the gold, that much amount of money will be deposited in that gold monetization scheme, and an interest will be provided to the customer on a regular period till the maturity. Okay, this is how the gold monetization scheme works. So the scheme, actually, if you see, it has replaced the then existing scheme, that is gold deposit scheme 1999. So who all can participate in this? All scheduled commercial banks except the RRB. Remember, except RRB, all other banks can participate, and eligible depositors, that is who all can come and deposit their gold with the bank. Resident individuals, HUF, trust, ETF, companies, government entities. So these are the various deposits who can come and deposit their gold. The minimum deposit. So minimum 10 grams have to be deposited, and there is no limit on the maximum deposit. Remember, minimum 10 grams has to be deposited to the banks. So let us see the various three categories. First is the short-term bank deposit. Here if you see, the bank sets the interest rate and permits premature withdrawals. The tenure is 1 to 3 years. So this is still in existence. This will not be stopped after March 26 also. This will still continue. Only the medium and the long term will be discontinued, but this still will be continued. Here the interest rate and the premature withdrawal terms will be decided by the bank. Remember, the tenure of this is between 1 to 3 years. Next is medium and long term deposit. Here if you see, the rate of interest, it will be decided by the central government and notified by the Reserve Bank of India. So currently the interest rate for the medium term is 2.25 and long term is 2.5 per annum I am talking. Here medium term tenure is between 5 to 7 years And long-term tenure is between 12 to 15 years. Short term we saw that 1 to 3 years, medium term 5 to 7 and long term 12 to 15. Lock-in period if you see, withdrawal is allowed after 3 years and long term if you see, withdrawal allowed after 5 years only. Here if you see premature withdrawal, it is decided upon the bank, but here it is already stated. That is, you can withdraw only after 3 years if it is a medium term deposit, and you can withdraw only after 5 years if it is a long term deposit. Next, see, this is where the customers go and deposit their gold. So, Collection and Purity Testing Center, BIS certified centers for gold deposit and redemption, and GMS mobilization collection and testing agent. These are BIS certified jewelers or refiners authorized to handle the deposits. These are the places where the person can go and deposit their gold. The next news is about an MOU. So, if you see Department of Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, it has signed an MOU with two parties, one with Yes Bank and another with the Kyndryl Solutions Private Limited. So, this is an IT infrastructure service provider. Okay. So, the purpose of this is to boost the India startup ecosystem. So, Yes Bank will provide customized banking and financial solutions such as working capital, credit access and cash flow management. So, these services will be provided by the Yes Bank. And then the Kyndryl Solutions Private Limited, if you see, this will provide mentorship on product development, market readiness, cyber security resilience, whether the market or the product that the startup has created, whether it is ready for the market or not, or some improvement has to be done. So, all this will be suggested by the Kyndryl, and Yes Bank will provide the loan facility, working capital and also term loan. All that facility will be provided by the Yes Bank. The next news is about the Insurance Advisory Panel. So, if you see, there is an Insurance Advisory Committee. So, 5 new members have been appointed in this advisory committee. So, the first one is Shri M.R. Kumar. He is the former chairman of the LIC. Next is Shri Dinesh Kumar Khara, former SBI chairman. Third is Ms. Vishakha Mulye. So, she is Chief Executive Officer of Aditya Birla Capital Limited. Next is Shri Nilesh Shah, the MD of Kotak Mahindra Asset Management Company, and the last one is Alice G. Varghese. So, she is the former chairman and managing director of GIC. Okay. So, these are the 5 new members appointed to the Insurance Advisory Committee, and this committee will be headed by Shri Dinesh Kumar Khara. Okay. Remember the 5 members, and main thing, at least try to remember the name, remember the person's name who will be heading this Insurance Advisory Committee. That is none other than Shri Dinesh Kumar Khara, the ex-chairman of SBI. So, this Insurance Advisory Committee, what it does? It advises IRDAI. So, on what? On regulatory matters concerning the insurance industry. So, these regulatory matters, if you see, these will make the advices to the IRDAI. So, this IAC will be contact with various insurance companies, collect information from them and then produce these advices to the IRDAI. So, this advisory committee, it will submit the report within 3 months to the Department of Financial Services, and this it was established in 2000. So, comment in the mention in the comment section who is the chairman of IRDAI. Who is the chairman of IRDAI? So, next, if you see, Bank of Baroda has launched an app called Baroda mDigiNext mobile app. The purpose of this is to cater to the corporate cash management needs. Remember, Bank of Baroda, Baroda mDigiNext. The purpose is to cater to the corporate needs. Okay. So, various features of this app, if you see, enhanced security with one-time password verification and 3-factor authentication, creation and authorization of one-to-one transaction, real-time enquiries on the transaction status, access to account summaries and mini statement. Now, what is this 3-factor authentication? 3-factor, if you see, the first factor is something you have, second factor is something you know, and third factor is something you are. So, let me tell you an example. For something you have, it can be a security token. So, in offices, and certain offices, they would have provided you the security token. It will be like a pen drive. So, you have to insert this. This is one. Next, something you know is nothing but password, right? When you enter your Gmail account or something, they will ask for your password. That is something you know. Third is something you are. That is the biometric device. So, certain in entries, if you see, biometric devices is an authentication method. So, these are the 3-factor authentication. Okay. The MD and CEO of Bank of Baroda is Debadatta Chand. The next news is Ministry of Finance has revamped the e-auction portal, that is BankNet. So BankNet is Bank Asset Auction Network. The name you can identify that the NPA, okay, the NPAs which are backed by the collaterals, those collaterals have to be discharged by the banks, right? It means that it has to be sold by the banks and they will recover that bank to close the NPA accounts, okay. So that money, if you see that auction of the collaterals, the land or everything, that is done in this network, that is Bank Asset Auction Network. Here only what all collateral the banks are planning to sell, all that will be listed, all the details. Suppose a house is being sold by the bank, okay. So all the details of the house, everything will be mentioned in this network, so the buyers can go and view it, okay. This is to further streamline the listing and auctioning of the bank's asset. So at present, if you see, 12 Indian public sector banks and the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India, they are using this platform for listing and auction of properties. For this purpose, if you see, now currently 12 Indian public sector banks and the Insolvency Bankruptcy Board, they are listing and auctioning the properties in this network. So this facilitates a convenient solution from property search to sale for all type of properties. So it's not just in particular state or district, all over India. You can search any property that is being auctioned all over India. Remember the name, it is BankNet, Bank Asset Auction Network. Next is about an appointment. If you see, Dilma Bana Rousseff has been appointed as the president of the New Development Bank. So, if you see, Dilma Bana Rousseff was the former president of Brazil and now re-elected as the president of New Development Bank, and the term will end only in 2030. So, up to 2030, Dilma Bana Rousseff will be the president of New Development Bank. The headquarters of NDB is in Shanghai, China. Remember the headquarters, very important, and the name also. Next is an agreement signed between ADB, that is Asian Development Bank, and Chennai-based Shriram Finance. So the amount involved is $150 million loan agreement. Remember, $150 million is involved in this agreement. The purpose of this is to enhance the financial access for the MSME in India. So this money will be used to improve the MSMEs. So funding will be provided to develop their business and also financing the electric vehicles and low emission commercial vehicles. So to help in developing a better sustainable environment, this EVs and low emission commercial vehicles play a vital role. So money will be used for this also. So how important is MSME to India? MSME, if you see, they contribute around 30% of India's GDP and also they constitute around 48% of India's exports to other countries. So this is how MSME is very important, and they also play a vital role in providing job opportunities. So that is why it is very important to finance MSME. And if you see, this EV financing and low emission commercial vehicle financing will help in achieving the EV 30 at 30 initiative of India. That is EV 30 at 30, it means that by 2030, among the total number of vehicles sold, at least 30% of the vehicles should be EV. That is this 30 at 30 initiative. That is by 2030, how many vehicles have been sold, in that at least 30% share should be of EV vehicles. So this will help in achieving that initiative. Next is a deposit scheme that is being introduced by the HDFC Bank. So the HDFC Bank has launched Embassy Fixed Deposit Scheme. This is exclusively for the embassy employees, the non-diplomatic staff and the diplomats. So diplomats, we know that they represent India, our country, in the foreign matters. They conduct negotiations, they involve in the foreign trades, foreign negotiations, they help in developing international relationships. So that is the main role of diplomats. And non-diplomatic staffs are the people other than the diplomats, that is they are involved in the administrative role in the embassy, the technical role. So for all these people, this deposit scheme has been launched and they can only invest in foreign currency, that too only in the US dollars now. Okay. And the minimum deposit, if you see, it is 5,000, and then you can also invest multiple of 1,000. So if you want to invest more than 5,000, then you can invest in multiple of 1,000, that is minimum 5,000, or you can invest 6,000 or 8,000, 9,000, multiple of thousands, you can increase the deposit. And premature withdrawal permitted with penalty. So if you want to withdraw your money before the maturity date, that is also allowed, but it attracts a certain amount of penalty. Remember the deposit name, Embassy Fixed Deposit Scheme. The next news is about an MOU. So SIDBI has signed an MOU with two parties. One is the Mumbai-based Clothing Manufacturer Association of India, and the other one is the Surat-based Sachin Industrial Cooperative Society Limited. Remember, Mumbai-based Clothing Manufacturing Association of India and Sachin Industrial Cooperative Society Limited. 6. Okay. So if you see under these agreement, MSME entrepreneurs will be eligible for collateral-free loan for up to 5 crore, which is expected to increase to 10 crore. And then the interest rate for these loans will vary between 8.75% and 9.75%. So for now, you remember that SIDBI has signed an MOU with CMAI and SICS. Okay, and they will provide loan to the MSME, collateral free loan up to now 5 crores. So now the limit is 5 crores. Next is Bank of India. They have partnered with NIACL, that is New India Assurance Company Limited, to provide general insurance products to the Bank of India customers. So this is more or like a bank assurance product. Okay. So now Bank of India customers will be having access to the insurance products of NIACL. And apart from that, Bank of India has also signed an MOU with the Indian Air Force to provide Rakshak salary package to the Indian Air Force veterans, families. So for them, these products will be provided. Remember, Bank of India and NIACL, then Bank of India and Indian Air Force. The name of the package is Rakshak salary package. You have to remember IF Rakshak. Okay. First, next news also we're going to read about Indian Air Force, but the bank involved there is a different bank. So here Rakshak salary package, if you see the financial perks offered is personal accident coverage of 1 crore and air accident coverage of 2 crore. Remember, personal accident coverage 1 crore and air accident coverage 2 crore. So next, if you see Bandhan Bank. So Bandhan Bank has signed an MOU with the Indian Air Force for Shaurya salary account. The previous news we saw Bank of India came Indian Air Force, but it is Rakshak. Okay, here it is Shaurya salary account. So here if you see a zero balance corporate salary account tailored for the Indian Air Force personnel, veterans and families. So here if you see, apart from that, Reserve Bank of India has appointed Bandhan Bank as an agency bank authorized to handle tax collection. So if you see, if you want to pay tax, like if you want to pay your income tax also, it is a form of a direct tax, right? So if you want to pay the tax, you cannot go and pay it in any bank. Okay, you can pay it only in those banks which are an agency bank. Not all banks are agency bank. Agency bank are appointed by the Reserve Bank of India. They have the sole authority to collect tax collection, to handle tax collections, that is direct tax, indirect tax and all. So only those banks can collect the tax. So now if you see, the Reserve Bank of India has appointed Bandhan Bank as an agency bank authorized to handle tax collection, that is direct taxes, indirect tax, and also it can disperse central civil pension and railway pension of Ministry of Finance. Okay, remember, very important, this is Bandhan Bank has been authorized to collect the taxes.
Thank you for watching the session. I hope you had enjoyed it. We're also available in Telegram under the name AffairsCloud_official. We also have an Instagram handle. Thank you.